Greetings, fellow lords and ladies. While our look at Season 3 of Game of Thrones now continues on with the episode, Walk of Punishment. So, beginning in Astapor, Daenerys, accompanied by Sir Jorah Mormont and Sir Barristan Selmy, walks along a seawall known as the Walk of Punishment. Here, any slave who showed insubordination of any type is strapped to a cross and left to die out in public, as a warning to all their slaves. Daenerys offers a condemned man water, but he refuses to drink, saying he just wants to die quickly. Jorah and Barristan continue to disagree on whether or not Daenerys should purchase the Unsullied. Jorah says that it's their only chance to get an army, but Barristan believes this is not the honorable way, as slavery is illegal and abhorred in the Seven Kingdoms. Jorah claims that not only will the slave soldiers be treated better in her service, but innocent people will also be spared in war because the Unsullied only do as they are ordered. They have no human or masculine urges in their bodies, and therefore will not kill civilians or rape innocent women, like most male soldiers who succumb to those urges in the heat of battle. Barristan retorts that when her older brother Rhaegar led his army in the Battle of the Trident, men fought and died for Rhaegar because they believed in him, because they loved him, not because they were slave soldiers whose free will had been stripped away. Jorah responds that Rhaegar indeed fought honorably and nobly, but then in the end Rhaegar died. Daenerys was born months after Robert Baratheon killed Rhaegar at the Battle of the Trident, and only knew her cruel and half-mad brother Viserys, so she asked Sir Barristan if he knew Rhaegar. Selmy was a member of the Targaryen Kingsguard and thus knew Rhaegar well. He fought beside him and bled beside him at the Trident. Barristan says that Rhaegar was the finest man he ever met, the last dragon. Daenerys grows quiet and says she wishes she'd known her older brother, but that Rhaegar was not the last dragon. She is. Daenerys speaks with Crester Smoke Naklos as he shows her his slave soldiers, the Unsullied. He repeatedly insults and mocks Daenerys in his native tongue, leaving his slave translator Missandei of Noth to clean up his crude and very insulting words into more respectful language. At one point, she pauses, ordering how to twist a particular coarse insult from crassness. Daenerys notices her reluctance to directly translate. Daenerys says she will take all 8,000 Unsullied soldiers, including those in training, but Crester laughs and retorts that she could barely afford 100 Unsullied. Daenerys surprises him by telling him she has dragons, and is willing to trade one. This offer stops Crester in his tracks, yet Daenerys repeatedly affirms that he may only have one of her dragons. They strike a deal that she may have all the Unsullied soldiers in exchange for her biggest dragon. Both Jorah and Selmy strongly object, and plead to Daenerys that while soldiers are valuable, and his dragons will ultimately win her the Iron Throne. She ignores them and concludes the deal with crassness, and soldier Missandei as a token of faith. Upon leaving the room, she scolds Jorah and Selmy, telling them that while she values their advice, they should never again question her in public. Daenerys speaks with Missandei and asks her if she has a family. She says no. Daenerys tells her of the man who turned down her offer of water, and asks why he would simply say, "Let me die." Missandei replies that in the afterlife there is no master. Thus, the man would rather be dead than alive in Slaver's Bay. Daenerys proceeds to explain the dangers Missandei will be facing in Daenerys' service, and asks if that will be a problem. Missandei simply replies, "Valem Morghulis, all men must die." Daenerys acknowledges the truth of the words, but quips, "We are not men." That's very true. Anyway, moving to Beyond the Wall. The Free Folk army of King Beyond the Wall Mance Rayder, including Jon Snow, arrive at the Fist of the First Men. They survey the bloody aftermath of the assault on the Night's Watch by the White Walkers and their army of undead whites. Mance clearly remarks that the White Walkers are always the artists. The several corpses of all of the Watch's horses have been carefully arranged into a large-scale ceremonial spiral pattern. However, there was no sign of any human corpses, which Roll insists were there when he scouted earlier by walking into his eagle, but have now vanished. Jon says that there were 300 men of the Night's Watch at the Fist, and asks Mance if Mormont could still be alive. Mance says that with Mormont, it's possible he was able to escape, but that even if he did, he and his men took quite a beating and are trod miles away from the wall with the White Walkers in close pursuit. Mance warns Jon that all of the missing corpses from the Fist are no longer his friends and brothers from the Night's Watch, but have been resurrected as undead monsters who serve the White Walkers. Mance orders Tormund to take a force of 20 men to scale the wall to attack Castle Black from its exposed rear. The fortress of the Night's Watch were purposely built to only defend them from attack over the wall, without defenses on their southern sides, so they wouldn't be a threat to the lords of the Seven Kingdoms. Mance's plan is for Tormund's small band to distract Castle Black by attacking their exposed southern side, at which point Mance's army will assault it from the north. Mance's main army will assault it from the north. Tormund will know that Mance is in position when his army makes a massive signal fire. Mance boasts that, "I'm going to make the biggest fire the North has ever seen." Mance orders Tormund to take Jon with him, as Jon knows the layout of Castle Black, and it will prove a key test of his loyalty. If it turns out that he won't really betray the Night's Watch, Tormund can easily throw him off the wall to his death. Farther south, Lord Commander Jorah Mormont leads the ragged survivors of the Night's Watch expedition to Crester's Keep. Crester mocks the survivors of the Battle of the First Men when they reach his keep. He initially wants to refuse them shelter until he notices some of them stroking their weapons. Fearful that in desperation they might try to rush him, he relents. As the Black Brothers warm by his hearth, Crester mocks them. Crester insists that the Black Brothers should be grateful for his generosity, and that he is a godly man for helping them. Mormontiously questions Crester's claim to be a godly man, but Crester insists that he is, to the real gods, the White Walkers, who consume entire armies on their way to the wall but will spare Crester for his loyalty. He must say he's feeding his pigs better than them, as pigs are valuable to him, and have seriously suggested to his guests that they should eat the fat Samwell Tarly. He is also known by Gilly's loud wailing from birthing pains. Sam leaves the main house to a birthing hut where he witnesses Gilly giving birth with the aid of a few other women. To her horror, the baby is a boy. Sam and Gilly wordlessly realize that Crester will want to sacrifice him to the White Walkers. Ugh. Anyway, at Riverrun in the Riverlands, the castle seat of House Tully, the funeral of the recently deceased Lord Hoster Tully, is held on the banks of the Red Fork of the Trident River. King Robb Stark has arrived with the main force of the Northern Army, and he helps launch his maternal grandfather's funeral boat, along with Hoster's younger brother, Brynden the Blackfish Tully. Catelyn and Robb's new wife, Queen Talisa, look on with the assembled crowd of bannermen on the dock. Hoster's youngest child, Catelyn's younger brother Edmure Tully, attempts to light the funeral boat on fire with a flaming arrow but fails 3 times. Just as the boat is about to disappear around a bend of the river, Brynden pushes his nephew out of the way and skillfully makes the shot. Knowing his accuracy was true and the shot would hit the boat, the Blackfish turns around to walk away, dismissively showing up Edmure at the same time, as soon as he releases the arrow. At Catelyn's old chamber in the castle, she mourns with her uncle Brynden over her father's death. She asks him if he made peace with his older brother, with whom he had been fighting for the past 30 years. Brynden explains that he did. On his deathbed, Hoster told him to stop calling himself the Blackfish, as it was a stupid joke created over 30 years ago by Brynden to symbolize his bad relationship with his older brother, and it wasn't very funny to begin with. Brynden emotionally joked back to his dying brother that people had been calling him Blackfish for so long that they'd practically forgotten his real name. Catelyn is happy that her uncle was able to make peace with her father before he passed, and is upset that she couldn't have been there. She reminisces that she watched from this window in her childhood whenever her father left, but now he won't be coming back. She tearfully wonders if her sons Bran and Rickon similarly watched at Winterfell for her return when she failed to arrive to save them. Brynden insists that neither he nor Robb have given up hope that the boys may be alive and in hiding, and urges her to be strong for Robb. King Robb, Brynden, and Edmure confirm Riverrun's meeting room. The war is not going well for them. The Lannisters have defeated their enemies in the south and secured King's Landing from attack, as well as a marriage alliance with House Tyrell. They have superior numbers, wealth, and strategic position. Edmure begins to speak of his recent victory at the Battle of Stone Mill, which pushed the Lannister army under Sir Gregor Clegane from the Riverlands. Robb and Brynden, however, are fierce to Edmure. Their grand strategy was to lure Tywin and Gregor's armies into the Westerlands, where they would be vulnerable, out of position, and unable to defend the capital against the Baratheons. Edmure's role in this was to offer token defense as a feint to lure the Lannisters back west across the Red Fork of the Trident. Instead, by successfully attacking the Lannisters at Stone Mill, Edmure kept them penned in the Riverlands, and thus close enough to King's Landing that Tywin was able to rush to the defense of the city at the Battle of the Blackwater. The Stark strategic position in the war has been ruined. Edmure says that they took valuable captives in the battle, William and Martin Lannister, but regularly points out they didn't stop fighting because his sisters are held captive. Considering that Tywin didn't stop to negotiate when his own eldest son was captured, taking his younger nephew's hostage will have no impact on the war. Edmure tries to at least point out that they only lost 200 men at Stomel, and multiple Lannister soldiers died for every man they lost, at which Robb cuts him off and shouts that they need more men than Tywin Lannister needs his, who already outnumber the Starks significantly. At this point, the Lannisters are in such a good strategic position that they can afford to be patient, and grind down Robb's forces through simple attrition. In the prison cells at River Run, Queen Talisa bandages the minor wounds of William and Martin Lannister. They are boys, only 14 and 15 years old. When the massive Robb really transforms into a wolf and eats the flesh of his enemies, Talisa says yes, but that he does not eat the flesh of children, except during the full moon. She has to guard if it's currently a full moon, and reassures the now terrified child that he is safe. Aww. Anyway, at King's Landing, Tywin Lannister calls the first meeting of the small council since he arrived in the city and assumed his position as Hand of the King. He has the meeting place changed to a room next to his own quarters in the Tower of the Hand, asserting his dominance. Tywin arrives early and has all of the council members called in at once. All of the seats are now on one side of the table, as a non-verbal test to see how each of them reacts around him. Peter Baelish ambitiously pushes the way past everyone else to be the one who sits closest to Tywin. Varys rolls his eyes that Littlefinger's naked ambition lets him pass, content to sit in the second closest seat for now. Grandmaster Pycelle, who is most focused on survival by avoiding direct conflict, doesn't try to fight over a better seat with either of them, instead quietly taking the third seat away from Tywin. Tywin's daughter Cersei arrives to find the seats are all occupied, but not wanting to play that game and be relegated to a lowly position, she pulls up a chair so she's sitting at Tywin's right hand, opposite Littlefinger. Tyrion is the only one who even mildly stands up to Tywin's posturing, but not even trying to sit closest to Tywin. Instead, takes a new chair and makes a point of noisily dragging it across the ground until it is positioned at the exact opposite end of the table from his father. Tywin is upset with the three advisors, knowing that between them, they possess the greatest number of spies in the world, yet none of them can locate his son Jaime, even though the entire northern army has heard of his escape. Tywin asks what news there is of the war, and Varys reports that Robb has taken the bulk of his army to River Run for his grandfather's funeral, while leaving Lord Roose Bolton in command of Harrenhal. Varys makes a jab at Littlefinger's recent titular promotion as Lord of Harrenhal, knowing that this makes Roose Bolton the current Lord of Harrenhal in practice, if not in name. However, Tywin insists that Roose can keep it, because the title alone is enough to give Littlefinger the social standing to be a suitor to Lady Lysa Arryn. Littlefinger states that they have known each other since childhood, and Lysa has always adored him, and thus she will soon remarry to him. Pycelle knows that this will make Littlefinger the acting Lord Paramount of the Vale, an even more important position. Baelish is even wearing a more expensive tunic than usual, laced with gold, to reflect his new status. Tywin states that this will confirm that the Vale of Arryn, which has been neutral in the war up till now, will not support Robb Stark, who is increasingly being hemmed in by enemies, other marriages alliances with House Tyrell of the Reach and House Martell of Dorne, combined with the crushing of the Baratheons, have in turn secured the rest of Southern Westeros under Lannister control. Tywin points out that Baelish departs for the Vale, that leaves a vacancy in the small council. Tywin reveals that he has appointed Tyrion as the new Master of Coin to replace him. This may seem like giving Tyrion a position of relative power again. Tyrion quickly points out that he has no prior experience of finance. With backhanded compliments, Cersei makes it clear that his promotion is really intended to give him an opportunity to make mistakes he will be blamed for. After the meeting, Podrick Payne and Sir Bronn drop by Littlefinger's office in his brothel, where he keeps his ledgers. Pot loads them all into a cart as Ross flirts with him. Littlefinger says it was the safest place to keep such records, but Tyrion notes that his brothel hasn't been the safest place for bastards. Baelish says he hopes Tyrion does well in the position, as he owes him for securing the release at Ross, after Cersei arrested her, mistaking her for Shae. But Tyrion says it was just a misunderstanding. Tyrion and Bronn then lead Pod into another room of the brothel, where Tyrion says that he wants to reward him for saving his life during the Battle of the Blackwater. He has paid for Podrick, who has never had sex with a woman, to enjoy the services of not one but 3 prostitutes, Mariek and a contortionist named Kyla. Only one for a womanly world who can properly perform a Miranese knot. Later, Tyrion is reading through the financial records and explains to Bronn that not all is as Baelish would like the court to think. Bronn asks if he thinks Littlefinger has been stealing to obtain the crown's money, but Tyrion says the problem is more that he's been borrowing all of it. Littlefinger always acted like he was a financial genius who could raise money seemingly out of nowhere, but in reality the Iron Throne is heavily in debt, and Littlefinger procured enough money to balance the books every year by borrowing massive sums of money from foreign banks. In particular, much of their debt is owed to the Iron Bank of Braavos, the largest bank in the Free Cities. Tyrion warns Bronn that when debtors to Iron Bank cannot repay their loans, the Iron Bank will first refuse to give out new loans and ultimately support rebellions against them. Tyrion fears that if they can't repay the debt, the Iron Bank will eventually cut them off and start supporting Robb Stark or Stannis Baratheon. Podrick then returns, with the money Tyrion gave him to pay the prostitutes. Tyrion is concerned that he let his heart and fled, but Pod innocently says he did all sorts of things with prostitutes. They simply refused his offer of payment. Impressed that the women would provide their services for free, Tyrion and Bronn ask Pod to explain in detail what transpired, so they can take copious notes. Anyway, over at Dragonstone, King Stannis Baratheon speaks to Melisandre as she prepares to depart by boat. He's worried that his enemies will think he's defeated and are laughing at him, and that now even she is abandoning him. She assures him that she still thinks he is the Lord's chosen, but she must travel to an unknown location to obtain something vital for his cause. Stannis says that he wants her, and that he wants Joffrey and Robb dead, and asks her to make a son again with him, like the shadow creature she conjured to assassinate Renly. Melisandre says that she cannot. Creating a shadow creature drains some of the fire from a man's life force, and she fears that creating another would kill Stannis. Over his protest, she explains that what she is seeking is even more powerful than shadow creature, and will change his fortunes in this war, but she needs the king's blood to do it. Stannis doesn't understand, but Melisandre implies that she needs to burn a human sacrifice who possesses the king's blood as an offering to the Lord of Light. She can kill Stannis himself to achieve this, but as she points out, there are others with your blood in their veins. Any of his brother King Robert's bastard children who managed to survive the Purge. Anyway, over in the north, at an undisclosed location, the young Greyjoy escapes from the dungeon with the help of a young man, who gives him a horse and tells him to ride east. Theon thanks him and says he'll make him a Lord of the Iron Islands for this, but the boy says that they aren't in the Iron Islands now. Theon is later hunted up by his captors in a prolonged chase on horseback through the woods. Ultimately, his pursuers split into two groups and trapped Theon between them, and he knocked off his horse with a flail. Theon's captors pinned him to the ground and pulled down his pants. The leader declares he intends to rape Theon as punishment for trying to run away. However, Theon's unidentified savior returns and snipes all the captors from afar using his bow, rescuing him at the last minute. Anyway, finally, in the Riverlands. At the end of the crossroads in the Riverlands, Arya Stark, Gendry, and Hot Pie are still in the company of the Brotherhood Without Banners, who are preparing to depart. Gendry has finished fixing steel breastplate which Thoros puts on, and Arya asks why Gendry is helping them. Thoros says that they are not prisoners, it's just that the war-torn Riverlands aren't a safe place for Ned Stark's daughter. Arya notices that they are loading Sandor the Hound Clegane into a prisoner cart, so she walks over and angrily asks him if he remembers the last time he was here. But he simply says all poor inns look the same. As they get ready to leave, Hot Pie explains that he isn't going with them. He bakes some bread for the innkeeper, and as he was a baker's apprentice when he lived in King's Landing, the innkeeper thought it was the best bread they've ever had and offered him a job. This life of fighting and traveling isn't really for him, plus Thoros finally made a deal with the innkeeper to pay for the free meals they enjoyed with Hot Pie's services. Before they go, he gives Arya a present he made for her, a loaf of bread shaped like a direwolf, though Arya implies that the tail looks like a head. Arya's a bit brusque, but the three wish each other well as they depart. As they are riding away, Arya starts eating the wolf bread and turns back to shout to Hot Pie that it is very good. Somewhere else in the Riverlands, Jaime Lannister and Bannow have been taken captive by Locke and a detachment of men from House Bolton. As they ride along, The men sing a rousing chorus of the Bear and the Maiden Fair. Tied up back to back on one of the horses, Jaime warns Brienne that when they make camp for the night, they will rape her more than once, and that his honest advice is to give no resistance and just think of Renly. They were only set to capture Jaime, therefore Brienne means nothing to them, so at the slightest provocation they will kill her without hesitation. Brienne says she'll fight even if they kill her, and Jaime agrees that if he were a woman, he'll fight to the death before being raped too. Later that night, Locke's men make camp, and do indeed drag Brienne kicking and screaming into the bushes to gang rape her. Jaime is disgusted by this plan's brutality, so he points out to Locke that Brienne is actually a noble woman and the sole heir of Lord Selwyn of Tarth, the Sapphire Isle, and her father will pay them a ransom of her weight in sapphires, provided that she is unharmed. Locke agrees and calls his men back before they're able to rape Brienne, and they tie her up to a tree again. Jaime tries to smooth talk Locke once again, with offers of his father Tywin will make him extravagantly rich if he lets Jaime go. Tiring of Jaime's frequent attempts to bribe him into turning over to the Lannister side, Locke decides to prove that Jaime's father will never deal with the likes of him. At first, Locke has his men untie Jaime on the pretext of letting him go, but then his men hold him down on a chopping block while Locke grabs a carving knife, threatening to stab Jaime in the eye. Locke reasons that maiming Tywin's son will be the ultimate proof that Lannisters would never deal with Locke, much less bribe him. Locke says that Jaime's father can't help him now, and this should help you remember, as he swings down the carving knife and hacks off Jaime's sword hand. For half a second, Jaime stares at his severed right hand in shock, before what just happened can register in his mind, and then he begins to scream, both in horror and agony. Ugh. So anyway, let's take a look at some notes surrounding this episode. The title of the episode comes from the Walk of Punishment in Astapor, where tortured or punished slaves are displayed. The song played during the credits is The Bear and the Maiden Fair, performed by the Hold Steady. This is the first episode of the series to be directed by showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. However, only Benioff is credited as directing it. Both directed the episode, but due to the way that the Directors Guild of America rules work, only one of them could be officially credited with directing it. The scene in which the small council members arrange their chairs non-verbally, signifying their tactics towards seeking power, was invented for the TV show. Production designer Gemma Jackson explained a small issue they ran into on set. At one point, the script calls for Cersei to drag her chair from one side of the table over to where she could sit in her father's right hand. But the actual chairs are very heavy, more than actress Lena Headey could lift. Therefore, the chair that Cersei uses had to be specifically built to be lighter so he could successfully move it around. Bran and Rickon Stark's storyline does not appear in this episode. Sansa Stark, Joffrey Baratheon, Marjorie and Olenna Tyrell did not appear in this episode. The preceding episode focused on the Sansa/Joffrey/Tyrell activities of King's Landing, where Tywin and the small council did not appear. This episode follows up on the other half of that, not featuring the characters seen last episode to focus on the activities of Tywin and the small council. Jaime Lannister mentions to Brienne that he used to have trouble reading, so his father made him read for 2 hours a day so he could begin his sword practice. Tywin mentioned Jaime's reading difficulties and his solution to them in the Season 2 episode The Old Gods and the New, during a conversation with Arya Stark at Harrenhal. That was said he would make Jaime read for 4 hours, not just 2. So far, the books have made no mention of Jaime having a dyslexia-like condition. In this episode, the Iron Bank of Braavos is mentioned for the first time. The Iron Throne's debt problems, with the realm being an astonishing 6 million gold dragons in debt, were mentioned way back in episode 3 of Season 1, Lord Snow, exactly 20 episodes ago. The outbreak of the War of the Five Kings didn't make such massive debts simply go away, and now the Lannisters have to come around to addressing this as a major problem. As Tyrion explains, Littlefinger always acted like he was brilliant at finding money, but it turns out he was really borrowing massive amounts of money from foreign banks, such as the Iron Bank of Braavos. Tyrion says that they, namely the Crown, owe the Iron Bank tens of millions, but apparently he was exaggerating. According to the books, the Crown owes about 3 million to the Lannisters, about 2 million to the Iron Bank, the Tyrells and several Tyroshi trading cartels together, and nearly 1 million to the Faith. Back in Lord Snow, Baelish clearly stated on screen that the Crown was 6 million gold dragons in debt, thus the debt hasn't been directly altered in the TV continuity. Baelish also stated on screen that King Robert owed $3 million to Tywin Lannister. As Bronn points out, Tywin's own puppet grandson is now seated on their throne, so the Lannisters can't pay themselves back $3 million. In the Inside the Episode featurette, Peter Dinklage explains that Tyrion wanted to reward Podrick so extravagantly because he feels bad about how his own father didn't reward him for any of his service in defending King's Landing. Tyrion is also grateful that Podrick saved his life and expects nothing in return. He just likes rewarding people who deserve to be rewarded when he can. Arya Stark challenges Sandor the Hound Clegane about what he did the last time he was at the Inn, referring back to when he rode down and killed her friend Micah the butcher's boy in Joffrey's orders, all the way back in the second episode of Season 1, The King's Road. The fact that a major war has broken out hasn't erased the fact that Joffrey had a child brutally killed on a whim, nor has Arya simply forgotten. Catelyn's uncle Brynden Tully calls himself the Blackfish because of his relationship with his older brother. Samuel Bryden's refusal to take part in a marriage alliance to House Redwine, which Hoster proposed for him. This led to Hoster calling him the black sheep of the Tully family, but pointing out that the Tully symbol is a fish. Brynden decided that this made him the black fish of the Tully family. Brynden took as his personal sigil the normal red and blue and red Tully heraldry, but the silver fish replaced with the black one. In a moment of anger, Robb Stark tells Edmure Tully that Tywin Lannister has his sister's captive, really just Sansa, and that Sansa made Robb stop fighting. Thus Tywin Lannister won't stop fighting just because Edmure captured Tywin's father's brother's great-grandsons. William Martell are actually the younger sons of Kevin Lannister and younger brothers of Lancel, and thus Tywin's nephews. Robb's point still holds that they're younger nephews and thus minor relations compared to Tywin having Robb's own sisters. Plus Tywin didn't even stop the war when his eldest son Jaime was Robb's prisoner. Robb was apparently just speaking loosely out of anger, to punctuate the point, rather than drastically changing the family relationships of Willem and Martin. I.e. was similar to shouting his fifth cousin 3 times removed. 2 episodes from now, Kissed by Fire, Edmure refers to them as Tywin's nephews, confirming that Robb's line in this episode was simply exaggeration. Writer Brian Cotton explained that initially, Martin and William only appeared in Kissed by Fire. However, after the table read, the production team felt that their sudden introduction and then major scenes in that episode happened too quickly and would confuse the audience. As a result, they created the brief extra scene in this episode introducing both of them in a River Run prison cell to set them up for later. In the books, tortured slaves in Astapor are put out on display in the Plaza of Punishment, not a Walk of Punishment on the battlements. This change arose from complications in the shooting location. The old city of Azoria, Morocco, where the scenes in Slaver's Bay are filmed, features an esplanade of gunpowder cannons, which cannot be physically removed. This is possibly a problem, as production designer Gemma Jackson explained, quote, "A whole line of cannons, they're absolutely movable, and we don't have cannons in our world. We decided to incorporate them into the Walk of Punishment, and we built cannon covers. And actually, the repetition of them made them look even better. I don't think anybody would question that they weren't there all the time." When Jorah asked him how many wars he has fought in, Severus Selmy says 3. These were the War of the Ninepenny Kings, the Greyjoy Rebellion, and Robert's Rebellion. John says that there were 300 men of the Night's Watch at the Fist. This is what he said in the book. The actual number of the Night's Watch men who participated in the Great Ranging in the books, but it contradicts the number Corrin said in The Ghost of Harrenhal, 400. The corpses of the Watch's horses were not simply scattered around. They are arranged in a symbolic pattern of a spiral seven spokes, spinning counterclockwise. Note that the wildlings' corpses found in the opening scene Winter is Coming were also arranged in a pattern, a diamond shape bisected by a vertical line. Tyrion says that the contortionist prostitute Kayla is one of only 4 women in the world who can properly perform a sexual position known as the Myronese knot. This is a little in-joke for fans of the books. In the Song of Ice Fire fandom, the Myronese knot is a reference to a complex series of plot problems George R. R. Martin encountered or in the 5th novel in the series, A Dance with Dragons. Problems which delayed the novel for a considerable amount of time. Gary Lightbody, foreman of the band Snow Patrol, makes a cameo appearance as a Bolton soldier singing the Bear and the Maiden Fair as they ride. Because they had to appear in a wide shot, Nikolai Coster-Waldau and Gwendolyn Christie are seated, tied back-to-back on a live horse, not a prop horse. The dismounting was something of a process. Showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss explained that while they put the lively indie rock cover of The Bear and the Maiden Fair in over the ending credits as a rope jump cut immediately after Jamie Lannister's right hand is cut off, in order to intentionally create as much mood dissonance as possible, to try to make the shock the TV audience feels match the shock the book readers had when they read that Jamie lost his hand. Quote, the wildly mismatched pairing of the violence and a rock song by Contemporary Band was a very deliberate move. It's a shocking ending, and when we read the scene in the books, it was so shocking to us, Weiss says. To really hammer home the shock of that moment, you need something unexpected. There's no version of a traditional score that would keep you off balance, as we wanted that scene to leave you feeling, I can't imagine. Having a conversation with Raman Djawadi, our composer, now we get that Jimmy gets his hand chopped off music. What we always loved in An American Werewolf in London. We see our hero shot and killed, and then his lover runs to embrace his dead body. It's a sad ending. But then we cut to black, and it's the bouncy 1961 Marcel's hit Blue Moon. That joint juxtaposition was fantastic. This episode was nominated for the 2013 Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Costume for a Series. Nice. So I think this is a pretty interesting episode, and yeah, that ending was definitely not what I was expecting, so yeah. So overall, I gave the episode Walk of Punishment 5 Iron Thrones out of 5. When you tune in tomorrow as we take a look at the next episode, and now his watch has ended. So until then, remember everyone, winter is coming.